Hey now, how is everybody doing? Welcome to Red Alert Diaries with Tanya E. On this podcast, we have conversations that's real talk, marriage, divorce, money, and legacy. I want you to join me on the journey. I've worn a lot of different hats in my life that have helped me develop a full range of strategies and actionable steps that I've used to help my clients make a strategic impact, both personally and professionally, to have better than what life has been given them. Today, I want to give you some insight about what happens when we go through divorce with our babies. When we are going through that traumatic experience, we know that we got to get things better, but we don't always pay attention to how our kids are walking through it. We do what we think we need to make certain that we keep the roof over their head, clothes on their back, food on their stomach, because that and that alone may be difficult. I know for me, and a lot of you know this story. After my divorce, I was unemployed, nearly homeless, couldn't figure out what I was going to do, and did not have money to feed my kids. In my mind, if I just got the basics together, they would be okay. But over time, I learned that there was more that I had to do. I had to do a deeper dive into helping my kids maneuver what was taking place through divorce. You see, their father and I still had to figure out how to do this co-parenting thing. And y'all, that in and of itself is an entire journey. So there were things that I had to learn in dealing with my emotional welfare and warfare when I had to deal with my ex-husband over what we had to do with the boys. But one of the things that became really clear as time moved on that I had to do more and more to keep my children stable was empower them. You have to give your children the tools that they need to manage how to deal with this two-parent household or split household or however you have it structured. They are walking through things that are different. They are walking through a life that they never anticipated because now they have a space where some parts of their world gives them the impression that two parents are supposed to be in the same household together and theirs are not. Or if they are in two separate households, because they may be in an environment where they have more and more of their friends who are in two separate households. So that part's okay. But in the other households, it seems like there's a little more congruency in the discussion. It seems like there's a little more coordination between the parents so that the kids are whole. But theirs, a little bit like mine was with the boys. My ex and I did not do very well in the beginning with our co parenting sequence. It was difficult, it was hard, and we had to figure some things out. But the thing that I knew I needed to do, regardless of what happened on the other side of the table, I had to empower my children. So here's a few things that I did to make sure that they were okay when they weren't with me. Because if you are the type of parent that I am, not really sure what's going on the other side, in the other house, in the other moments, but you want to still keep them stable. When my kids came back, because their father, he has always been the fun dad. He kept that up and kept that going. So when they went for their weekend, by the time they came back home, I had to reset them, sort of strong arm them a little bit to getting back into their regular schedule so that they can do what they had to do for school. I had to let them know that this is not the weekend. This is not time to play. Get your work done, turn it in, and be on top of them more and more. Those first couple of days when they came back from their dad were the most difficult for me. So what I had to do was ensure I was consistent with how things were when they came home and empower them to keep that consistency with me. You see, when you're structuring the every other weekend thing, which was part of my scenario, and if that's yours, here's something that you can do. Remind your children before they leave that they have a voice. If their bedtime is a particular time and they need to go to sleep because something else is happening, let them know. You can say to your father or for the men that are doing this, because there are men. And I want you all to recognize, and I want to also commend the men that are standing in the gap right now that have to be both mommy and daddy because your ex-wife not really functioning in the capacity that they really need to. So you are the one that has to keep the kids straight. You are the one that has to make certain that they're whole. You are the one that is standing in the gap on a more regular and consistent basis. Men, I want to commend you for doing that. And I want to let you know that your babies see it and they are grateful for it. So, getting back to if they have to go away, empower them. Empower them to have the voice to say, I am tired if they are tired. Empower them to have the voice to say, this isn't something that I really watch and I'm not comfortable watching it. Empower them to use their voice. Because when you aren't there to be their voice, they need to know that it is safe for them to use their voice themselves. We don't give our children enough insight that it is all right. And I initially didn't have that thought process either. But when I finally dawned on me to tell them to say certain things, sometimes you have to put the words in their mouth to support them so that they are respectful. So what I would share with the boys is when you go to your fathers, if there's a conversation that he has that was bringing me up and they weren't comfortable, you can say, Dad, I'm thankful that you're here. I like to spend time with you instead of talking about mom, and vice versa. If they're in a position where you have the other parent that is always partying or have a lot of things going on and the children have a bedtime and they're tired, but they want to try to still stay up because they don't know if they should say, can I go to bed? Let them know. Dad, I'm glad that we're enjoying ourselves at this time, but I want to get some rest. Can I go to bed now? Or if they're scheduled, because you have them at a certain schedule, because I know with my youngest, he has sickle cell. So he was on a particular schedule so that I can be consistent with his body being regulated so that he would not go into a crisis mode. And I also had certain foods that he had to eat to help him because it increased the blood cells and the blood flow so that he can be whole and I won't end up having to constantly go to the hospital when he came back home from his visit. So there's foods that you have your children eating on a particular basis, and it sort of happens where it's off a little bit when they're with the other parent. Empower them to say, hey, could you buy X, Y, and Z for me so that I have it while I'm here? Because it's helpful for me. Or if there's some schedule and they get hungry maybe in between the schedule. And sometimes I know with my oldest, he snacked. So by the time it was time to eat, he mostly ate, but the snacking in between was causing some issues. So he was eating so much all the time. Getting on that consistent schedule helped with that. So we can just simply say, can I have something to eat at whatever the time is? Empower them to ask for those things. Empower them to make those statements. And it seems like it's small, but they don't often know that they can do that. Lots of times our children are following what was already a preset schedule. Because a lot of us, when we're married, and I didn't realize until I became divorced, how much the other spouse did. See, my ex-husband was really great at getting up and fixing their meals. He was like a sous chef. He had the personal meals for the youngest one and a personal meal for the older one. I did not have the time nor the inclination to do all of that when it was just me by myself. So they had whatever I fixed and you had to eat it. So it was awkward for them to have those moments where they wanted to even share with me, Mom, can I just have this for breakfast today? So I had to empower them to share with me when they were with me what they needed from me as well. Give them the voice that they can use wherever they are. Let them know that it doesn't matter if it's with me, with the other parent, or out in the world. If you feel that you have to say something that was going to keep you whole, give you some insight about what's happening in your world so that you can function, speak it. Here's one other thing I want to leave you with. When they are away from you, they need to know that they have their voice, but they also need to know that it is okay to feel how they feel. Sometimes we forget while we're going through our mourning period of our marriage that they are mourning it as well. Create a safe space for them to be able to share how they feel. Create an environment that they know that if I come to this moment, I can say how I feel and what's going on. In my household, what I did was create a family meeting. Anybody could call a family meeting. And my youngest one at the time was 7 years old when I created this as an established moment in our home. And he called a family meeting because he did not like having to clean up his room, but he was still in the middle of learning how to do it more and more. And because the ex was not around, I had to do a whole lot more things. So some of the little pieces that I used to do to fill in the gap for them, that wasn't happening. So he had to be a big boy and really do what was asked of him. So to help him get used to doing tasks that he was not familiar with, he had the space in the family meeting to share how he felt about it. Now, I let them know in the family meeting that I will acknowledge how you feel, and what you say may or may not change what's happening in the household. But what I did in that family meeting was explain to them why I had them do the things that I had them do. And I shared with him, you may not like cleaning up your room. You may not like putting away all the things. And if you did not take out all the toys at one time, you wouldn't have to worry about putting them all back. So if you don't like doing certain things, decide how many things you want to put away later. Here's another thing that I did that may or may not be helpful for you. I let him know that if he really didn't want to do that, then we don't need to have as many things in your room for you to play with or deal with. Now, there's some stuff that I still was teaching them to share with others. So it wasn't like there was an overflow of a lot of things around the house for the boys, because we gave gifts away. We gave things to Goodwill. They knew certain stuff that they had as they got older. You're getting new toys this year. Let's go through some of your old toys and share them with some other kids that may not have these things. So they were familiar with that. So this was a moment for them to decide, how many other things do you really want? Because if it's too much, we can decrease that too. Now, they didn't like that thought a whole lot. So they started cleaning up a little bit more. And when it came time to do other chores, I let them know, in this household, we have to make certain that it's maintained. So in addition to cleaning your room, now that you are older, as you get older, I let them know be one more thing added on. So I used their age. He was 7 years old. So he had 7 things that he was responsible for doing. That way he knew before his birthday was coming that there was going to be one new task he would be responsible for. And to get him to do it, I also shared with him, because you're older and because you one day will do some things by yourself, this gives me the chance to know how responsible you are. Because if you can manage this, when you ask me, can you do some other things? I will know that you can manage that as well. So they recognize that doing the chores around the house or the extra activities that we were working on was something that was letting me know that they were being responsible, that they were ready to ask for different things that they like to do. And one of those things for them was having an extra 30 minutes to play on the video games, because I limited their video game time, because you couldn't get all your homework done. You're not able to clean up your room and you still can't do all your chores. There's no way possible. You can get more time to play video games. But because they started doing what they were asked, because they started doing the chores a little bit more, then they let me know that they were ready to do something else. So hopefully these give you some insight along the way about what you can do. And so for today, if you don't remember anything else I've shared, here's the one thing I want you to know. Create the space to empower your children to do what they can do. Because just like you've gone through the chaos of your divorce, they've gone through it also. Give them the tools that they need to be empowered. Give them the insight that they need to be whole, and strengthen them along the way. If you want someone to join you on the journey, feel free to go to my website, TanyaEhood.com. There you can click under the Work With Me tab and see the various ways that we can work with one another. And if you're on Instagram, we will have a live conversation at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we can continue this conversation, or we can start a new one. In the meantime, this is Tanya E. Hood walking in my purpose. And I want you to do the same.